How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the newest installment of Kernels of Truth, episode 3. If my voice sounds a little raspy, I've been feeling a little sick these past 3 days. I also haven't been able to rest lately, which is why I didn't even go live yesterday. But I just thought I would stop by for a little bit. I already posted somewhere the community post where I would probably do back-to-back lives because I just didn't have any time to do anything on Friday. I just felt Friday was clearly working its magic against me the whole day. But I decided to make a quick pit stop before I start the new installment. Just be a pal and please click that like button on your way in. I hope you guys are having a good day. Uh, how are you? I found Dory. Thank you for stopping by. Hope your day's going great. Now, it's gonna be a little bit hard to get my words out because, of course, I'm still a little bit sick. So my mind's in a daze right now. But I just wanted to stop by and just kind of motivate people because that's really what motivates me. In fact, I should do that for myself, but I feel that most of the time, the way I motivate myself is when I get the chance to motivate others. So essentially, that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to do a little small live today. And tomorrow we might dive into some serious topics. There's been a few that have been catching my attention, such as the situation where there was a 32-year-old woman shot. And it boggles my mind how she was simply shot because someone wanted more onion rings for their order. I mean, that is something I might discuss in detail tomorrow, but it just shocks me. So I thought I'd just, I guess, spoil it. Why not? But that's essentially what's happening. Our world is going upside down, and it just seems that people aren't making sense anymore. Their logic, common sense, we don't have it anymore. We just run on instinct and emotions, which is a recipe for disaster. But unless, of course, you're going through something dangerous, then that's the only time it's ever applicable. But let's go on ahead and let's just start with a situation that deeply troubles me. So we have a situation that affects me, and I'm sure it's a situation that affects many of you as well, which is unless you are in one of those 20, 30, or 40 plus years marriages, then typically this won't apply to you because you already made it in life. You found someone, and now you don't have to worry about settling with anyone because just as they've become a priority in your life, you've become a priority in their life. So you are set. But nowadays, a lot of us, people who are much younger, we just don't have the skills to communicate. We don't have the skills to connect, and we don't have the skills to uh, make a relationship a priority anymore. But the reason I bring this up is because most of the time we just think about the other person and we don't think about ourselves. And the saddest part is when we start dating someone is when that moment of awareness sort of opens up, our mind opens up, and we start to realize, huh, there's something troublesome going on here. I don't feel connected to myself. I don't feel good being in a relationship right now. And this is a result of what creates issues down the road, not just for you, but any other person who entertains a relationship with you. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say all the relationships will work out because relationships is not just simply about falling in love with someone. That's the key that maybe you could say that the main component, right? Whether or not there's love between you and that person. But love alone can't sustain a relationship. It can fuel it and it can motivate it, but there's a lot of factors that you have to include in between, which is effort, consistency, communication. And if you don't have any of these, then love is just a sinking ship, just like the Titanic. Eventually, everything will just fall downwards. It will, you can't escape reality. And the reality is, most of these relationships are sinking ships because most of the time, people don't know how to communicate with each other. They know how to get on each other's, case. They know how to aggravate each other, but they don't know how to communicate. And most of the time now we communicate in very different ways. We either play mind games with each other or we just ignore each other completely. And either approach isn't good in the long run because you're not going to sustain a relationship if you can't communicate with the other person. But what I found for myself, even though I've made these mistakes, not to the same gravity as other people, but I've still made these mistakes. I've always had this whole situation where I don't talk a lot and I just kind of expect people to figure me out, but that's not healthy. And that's not going to make anyone understand me either way. So it's very clumsy of me, and I'll acknowledge I can be very clumsy when I communicate. But the biggest issue with communication is feeling comfortable with yourself and not being afraid of the reception you will get. And I think this is why people only tell you half truths most of the time because they don't know what the truth looks like anymore. We've reached a point where we are a society who performs. We're so worried about what other people think, and that's natural. But when it overrides who you are as a person, that's when you can't really have a relationship because you're worried about creating a polished version of yourself and you don't realize the person you're trying to impress might not care about you the next day, but you still go out of your way to create an image of what they want, but not presenting yourself as who you are. And I'm not telling you this to tell you that I know better than you. I'm telling you this in case you ever needed any motivation, any pep talk, because it's not about who knows more than who. Sometimes you can know everything, but feel nothing inside. And that's the thing people don't understand. Logic doesn't always answer all the questions. Logic can help you get there, but there are other things that really matter, whether you have the drive to make the change and the drive to make the improvements. And if you don't have that within yourself, no logic in the world will make a difference. Okay? Because relationships aren't supposed to be a Rubik's Cube where you're just supposed to solve, each tile until it matches. You sometimes have to apply critical thinking. Don't get me wrong. But if a relationship is something that you have to figure out, then that's definitely a relationship that's going to end up in disaster sooner or later. And I'm upset with myself because it makes sense when you talk about it, right? It makes sense. But once you're actually putting yourself out there, that's when everything just slides under the table. everything stops making sense. And that's the most frustrating aspect of relationships because you want them so bad. But the more I think about it, and I just thought about this, I think maybe 2 days ago, I think a lot of the time when we fall in love from a place of security, from a place of emptiness, and from a place of loneliness. But we don't really fall in love because we really enjoy the person that we want to call our significant other. We do it because they give us something that we can't produce on our own, or something people in our past, such as our parents, weren't able to provide for us. But all that does is essentially put you in a position where you constantly have to perform and constantly seek validation by any means necessary. And all you're doing is exhausting yourself because through the constant performance and through the constant validation seeking, you realize at some point or another, remember, some of us take longer than others, but you eventually realize at some point that it's worthless. It's worthless to perform. It's that you should never treat a relationship like a job interview, like something where you have to really put all the stops. You know what I mean? Just being a curated version of yourself. Now, you could say that a relationship might start as a job interview because you are meeting a person, you're asking important questions. But it shouldn't be something where you're just at the judge's table all the time. You want to score a 10 out of 10 every single time with that person, whether it's decisions, hobbies, anything you can think of within the context of a relationship, goals, decisions, hobbies, etc. You're not really going to always be successful in that regard. You're just not, and that's okay. But the most important part is the U equation, and I just really want to bring this into this into this live stream and share this with you. The U equation is something that you need to take into consideration, and it might help. And if it doesn't, well, at least just try it and see. But the U equation is just trying to more or less think about yourself in in a way where you figure out what applies and what doesn't apply instead of trying to cram everything into your life and somehow trying to make it work, whether through time or effort. The U equation is just essentially you figuring out what's a good fit or a bad fit for you. That's really the crux of it. The U equation is just to figure out what's the right fit for you. And that applies not only in love, not only in friendships, but also interests as well. What is applicable to you? And I say this because I think a lot of the time we get distracted with everything. We get distracted by our emotions, our grievances, our failures, and we forget that while all of this does play an important role in some shape or form, the most important thing is what can you do with this information? Because as painful as it sounds, sometimes these moments, if they keep looping and repeating themselves, it's probably trying to tell you something. It's probably trying to tell you, hey, be mindful that, hey, you're going through this experience once again, and we're just shining light into into you. And we're shining this, we're putting this mirror and we're shining light into this situation so that you can make sense of it. And the reality is, I realized that we can try to make sense of the indefensible, right? We can make sense of the indefensible, but eventually you'll realize it just doesn't make sense defending a specific stance because it just doesn't have a leg to stand on anymore. It doesn't. And that's just the reality. And I say this with the U equation, make yourself a priority. Try to look at a situation and see if this does fit your lifestyle and go from there. And set important parameters in place just in case it doesn't work out in your favor. But it's important to do it because through our distractions in life, I've reached a conclusion, which is most of the time, we're trying to basically fill in shoes that just don't belong to us. And we curate this image that doesn't apply to us. It doesn't. But we do it because we don't want to answer the tough questions. Because asking the tough questions is like pulling a scab, and it hurts. And you would just rather leave the scab alone than tug it, even if it means it gives you the answer you really need to hear about a situation. And I know it. I don't like to go through this experience, and I'm still going through it because asking the tough questions, it's easier said than done. And I don't judge you or anyone who goes through it. But we need to ask ourselves the tough questions. And the tough question is, does this person really do anything for you? Does this person or thing do anything for you? Does it make you want to keep going? Or does it make you just want to curl into a ball? These are important questions, and I think the U equation is important because it helps you gain perspective and it makes you realize I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm just blindly putting myself at a disadvantage to keep a charade going. Don't live life and by entertaining a charade that is only going to make you unhappy in the long run. Now, happiness isn't constant, right? It isn't constant. If you think happiness is you're gonna wake up every single day feeling happy, or every single day you're gonna have a smile plaster across your face. No, you won't. But it's worse when you don't have a life that's full of purpose because you're entertaining a charade or you're hiding behind a mask, unwilling to live your life to the fullest because you don't you don't know where to start. You just think trying to impress others or trying to live a life that doesn't seem what is it, in tune with who you are as a person is going to bring that desired outcome. And I'm just going to tell you, it might motivate you, it might make you happy temporarily. But in the long run, these issues are going to come back sooner or later. And so the U equation, it just makes me realize that it's making me realize, and I still need to practice it a lot more. But it's making me realize that I want to be okay with people not liking me. I want to be okay. You know what? You don't like me? That's great. At least I know now, and I can have security in my mind, not knowing where I stand with this person. If a situation doesn't work out, I can go, you know what? I have security in my mind knowing that this thing won't work out anymore. But we're afraid most of the time, and the reason we're afraid most of the time is because we think we don't deserve better, or we think something better won't arrive for us. Now, don't confuse this for a good situation with a few little nicks, because if you have a good situation with a few nicks, don't jeopardize it, because in that case, you might not find something better. But if it's a situation where, you know, you can literally see the tombstone, like the situation's just done and over with, then that's when you really need to apply the U equation and sort of look at the situation, analyze it, and reach your own conclusion whether or not you want to pursue that person or thing any further. And if they have a spot in your life, because you can invite just about anyone or anything into your life, but is it just bringing them value, or is it also bringing you value as well? Because if it just brings them value, that's great for them, but it's not good for you. And you really shouldn't fall into the trap of just saying, well, I'm making them happy. Let me keep the charade going. But deep down within yourself, you don't feel happy about what you're doing anymore. And the U equation essentially is just the following. Uh, Taking a proactive choice to make sure anything you do in general has your stamp of approval, meaning anything you entertain, anything you do, doesn't come from a place of just simply pleasing others for validation or to keep them in your circle. Because if it doesn't bring you any value or any purpose, then that's just a net that's not a net positive. That's just a battery drain at that point. And you're entertaining people or situations that end up being a battery drain for you. And you can do as you please. I mean, if that is really what you prefer and you don't want to explore any options, then I don't recommend it, but that is your choice as well. But always remember that the new question is just realizing that, hey, I'm going to give myself the consent of no longer entertaining or entertaining a situation that's good for me. And I don't think we give ourselves the consent to stop a situation that no longer helps us because we're afraid of disappointing everyone else around us. And I get it, that is a rational fear, but it becomes irrational when you defend it constantly and you end up making yourself feel miserable. That is when it takes a toll for the worst because at that point you're just going to be living life on autopilot. But you're not smooth sailing, when you're on autopilot in that manner. You're really just swerving, ducking, and diving. You're not living a tranquil lifestyle because you're not doing anything that aligns with yourself and whatever makes you feel happy. You're doing things that put a smile on your face temporarily because you're helping others be happy. And that's important, don't get me wrong. But if it only brings you emptiness, then that's your answer right there to figure out what is your next step. Now, this doesn't mean that my advice is to tell you to up something good. If you're going through a little hardship with a relationship or a situation, this advice isn't for you. This advice is mainly for people who go through situations where they depend their happiness on a person or a situation because they're trying to find meaning for themselves. The most important thing is to ask yourself the important question, which is the U equation, which is, okay, is this a natural fit for me? Do I like the idea of this person? Do I like the idea of this opportunity? Can I actually commit to it? And how do I feel experiencing this person or situation? And that is when you make a decision. And that is when you kind of reach your own conclusion without shame or guilt. Because that's essentially what a performance or a people pleasing person does. They feel shame because they don't know what to do with themselves, and they feel shame of letting other people down. So that's a double whammy right there. Um, and the reality is, it's just not going to help you. So you might as well just start from scratch. Ask yourself the important question: who am I and what I want to be? And if you can't come up with something like with an answer that is as long as a paragraph, that's fine. You don't need a long answer. You just need to start somewhere. Just write down, where do I want to start? And if you can't answer the rest, then build on that answer until you reach a conclusion. But that's essentially it. What I wanted to share with you guys. I'll probably create another live eventually. I'm sorry if I didn't update you guys, but I just haven't really been feeling well lately, and I just been forgetful. So I'm just gonna let you guys go. You guys have a wonderful day, and stay tuned because I might have a live stream for you guys tomorrow. Until then, you guys have a wonderful day. If you were a part of the replay game, please click that like button on your way out. Thank you, and I'll see you guys the next time.